Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Rankin, First Assistant Prosecutor, to our guest speaker today, G. Gary Tyack, our 51st County Prosecutor. Gary has served as a judge on the 10th District Court of Appeals for 24 years and practiced law since 1965. As a lawyer, he has handled cases involving murder, drug cases, traffic cases. He's also served on the Worthington School Board, as well as a visiting judge on the Ohio Supreme Court. Prosecutor Tyack is a U.S. Army Vietnam veteran and has served on numerous nonprofit organization boards, such as Community Housing Network, Neighborhood House, Mary Haven's Board of Directors, and the United Cerebral Palsy of Central Ohio. Gary is also an active member of the Worthington United Methodist Church. So without further ado, to talk to you about the first 10 months in office, here is our prosecutor, your prosecutor, Gary Tyack.
Maybe more than you ever wanted to know about me. The other thing I will fill in at this point in time is that I'm 75 years old, and therefore I am told that I'm sort of in the middle range of the membership ages of the folks in this particular club. When I started on January 4th of this year, things were sort of a mess, and not because Ron did anything wrong, but because we had a mess as far as the COVID and the other things like that. We were already running behind on trying homicide cases, and now we were up to close to 200 pending homicide cases here in the office. And I'll try to cut into that, but you can only do so much. And the other thing that we had to do, and was part of what the election was all about, was the whole community had to feel that if a police officer engaged in bad conduct, that they would be punished for it. And so that's part of what we dealt with. You've got in front of you, I think, the pictures from the Minneapolis case that was tried. We don't really have anything quite like that yet, although we do have some situations coming up where a police officer shot someone, and we're going to have to deal with the aftermath of that. As a result of that, we have hired 2 people to serve as special prosecutors, because we find ourselves in the awkward situation where we are both supposed to be prosecuting people and also supposed to be defending the people who are involved. For instance, if somebody is with Children's Services and is viewed as being partially responsible for the death, then we have to represent Children's Services, and we need to farm out the prosecution. That's going to be something we have to deal with coming from this point forward. I think most of you have a feel for the general responsibilities of the prosecutor's office. The thing that has not been emphasized up to this point in time is how much our responsibilities vary based upon the necessity of representing all the Franklin County office holders. And so, for instance, as I mentioned, the case that with a young woman who was shot, and now the young woman's family is thinking that they have a right to pursue Children's Services because the young woman was not kept away from this kind of peril. So we've got a whole heck of a lot to do. I mentioned the prosecutors of the normal criminal cases, but we also, like I say, there's over 200 people who work here in the office, and there's also a big bunch of people affiliated with different county agencies. We represent everybody in the county. I was 74 when I took the spot. I'm 75 now. I had a stroke last fall, which didn't affect my brain any, and there were rumors being run around that I was never going to take office, and needless to say, that rumor was very very wrong. And but there are some of the career political types always wanted to think that the Democrat would never actually take office in Franklin County, and I was the first Democrat to hold that office in many, many, many years. I don't have to run again till 3 years plus from now. We'll see how all that goes. If my body stays under control, and I would have every reason to think that I will complete this term. But my current intention is not to end up seeking another term, which would have me be in my 80s before I would end up being done with that. In the meantime, there is a need for just plain common sense and good thinking on some of this. The feeling in the African American community in particular was that people who shot African Americans weren't going to be prosecuted, and we're undoing that feeling at a great rate. But we're having trouble keeping up with the homicide prosecutions because there are just so darn many. If you read the paper, you know that it's hardly a weekend goes by that we don't add another one or two people to the list of the dead. So that was part of the perfect storm that I inherited, and you saw the picture that we Rankin and some of the others here have put together parts of this thing, so you'll see where some of this happens. Part of what I did was hire a total of 5 first assistants. Most of them are probably known to those of you who spend any time around the courthouse, but Ed Leonard used to be the county treasurer, and he went to the Board of Elections, and he was willing to take a job as helping run the administration here. Janet Grubb is a friend of mine from very, very many years. Janet had been a public defender. She had been also a judge in the municipal court, and it's her job to run the criminal division, which is huge. It's the one that prosecutes all the criminal cases. And like I say, through no fault of her own, she inherited a huge backlog. David Ingram is a young African-American who has great ability and has a great disposition. And he is helping Janet with the criminal division and with specialized parts of that. Janine Hummer is, when I first knew her, was Janine Ahmed. And then 9/11 happened, and she decided that having an Arabic last name was not ideal. So she ended up going by her married name. She's married to Mark Hummer, who is a municipal court judge and who is running unopposed for re-election this year. And then number 5 was Mike Rankin, but actually in order of events, he was the first. He was the first one I talked to about having the ability to run a large office, because I knew he had run large offices in the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And therefore, I needed somebody right off the bat who could handle large groups of people and be responsible. So that's how Mike got involved. I mentioned the perfect storm type thing. We're making headway, but we don't know how it's going to go. And some of the cases that are best known remain to be seen. For instance, the Husel case with Mount Carmel was going to have a major hearing come up in the next few weeks, but that's been held off because the attorney who represents Dr. Husel is tied up for a while. I've got also, there are situations where police officers have shot people, and we've got three of those pending for trial. Probably trials will begin by the end of the year. I did not do what some people wanted me to do, is walk in and immediately fire all the Republicans. That was never my intention. And if you wipe out a group of talented people every 4 years, then you're going to have a mess. So I had a few that I showed where the door was, a couple of whom needed that. They had not been nice to lawyers. They had not been nice to other people. But over 90% of the staff was retained and is still here. Many of them have been here 5, 10, 15, even 20 years, and they're still doing the work, and they're still making the office a good place to be. People like Mark Wodarczyk and other folks like that are very important to the functioning of the office. We've been trying to get additional prosecutors. Part of what concerned me when I arrived was that virtually the whole staff was white. And we live in a county that is, I think, 40% African American. So I felt we needed to pay attention to making sure that we had a balance in the staff. And so far I've had pretty good luck on that. My thing mentions the APA. When you see the word APA, it means Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. With all the shootings, we've had to increase the gun unit. We've had to increase several of the other units, which are important to the functioning of the office, like the gang unit and other ones that are violent. So we're after that all the time. Janet Grubb is always working to try and find new people, and Mike Rankin has the job of trying to make sure we bring the office into the 21st century. It doesn't, and particularly have a history of that. I liked Ron O'Brien as a person, but we had different ideas about what ought to be done with the money and what ought to be done with the staff. One of the things that Mike has done is put a lot of effort into this effort to pull us into the 21st century. That we are having the ability to use all sorts of real-time crime information. And to that extent, we've been working with the City of Columbus and the Sheriff's Office, and they seem to like us a lot. They got fed a whole bunch of information after I won the election, how I was going to be so difficult to deal with. And they have been, I think, very pleased because I have tried to get them money and tried to give them a chance to develop the skills they have and the people they have. There are a lot of these real-time crime information centers throughout the country, and we're trying to visit some of them and trying to develop our own so we can take advantage of the technology that is now there. I mentioned ShotSpotter. We already have some ShotSpotter situation here in Columbus, but there needs to be a lot more. There needs to be better use of digital evidence, and we need to be able to do that sort of thing without creating a problem. So I hope that we can continue with that kind of innovation. We're going to try to have a real-time crime center. I don't know when the best time to shut up is, but we'll be working for a while. We know that the violent crime is going on. We're dealing with a huge number of juvenile situations and gangs trying to recruit juveniles. And like the comment says on the park, our new police chief has talked about the real-time crime center type of thing as being helpful, and we're going to end up trying to do that. Now, I have it on good authority that this is a group who likes to ask questions, and so I will give you an opportunity for some of you, if you have questions, to ask them, and I will, I don't believe in refusing to be responsible for the public. So if you got a question, I will answer it. And if in the rare case where I don't want to answer it or can't answer it, I'll later. So with that, what kind of things do you want to know that I haven't talked about?
Yes, since you've been a judge, do you have an opinion as to whether judges should continue to be elected or should we go to an appointment system?
As you know, I was a judge for over 24 years, and frankly, there is a problem with either one of them. When you do it by elections, the people who win are the ones with the most familiar names or the richest backers, and that's a problem in and of itself. Many years ago, I put my name in to be considered for the federal court, and I was one of 3 people who was particularly being heavily considered. And a friend of mine, Bill Brown, the former Attorney General, asked me to come over to his office, and he said to me, Gary, I know you got a lot of talent, but you're not going to be considered for this federal judgeship. Stan Chesley's wife, once it, Stan has given over $6 million to the Democratic Party, and in return for that, he is going to get the pleasure of having his wife named a federal judge. It's odd that now Stan has lost his license, but his wife is still a federal judge in this area. Needless to say, there were 3 of us that were considered in the finals. Janet Jackson, who has lots going for her, but had never tried a federal case in her life. Susan DeLotte, who had the asset of being Stan's wife, and I, who had tried all sorts of federal cases, but I wasn't going to get seriously considered, according to Bill Brown. And that's the way it worked out. So there are problems with the appointment system, and there are problems with the election system. You get some people every once in a while who win solely based upon a familiar name or a lot of financial backing, but very little ability. Funny thing is, last year, as most of you would be aware, it was an all Democratic year. And we had some good Republican judges that went down to defeat in the process. Whereas the Democrats elected everything last year, and some of it worked out real well. For instance, I thought the probate judge, Rob Montgomery, was absolutely going to walk away with it. He lost, but the person who has replaced him is doing an exquisitely good job of being the probate judge. So every once in a while, the voters know better than we lawyers. But anyway, I can't give you, I don't have a dog in that hunt, okay? I've tried the appointment thing and seen it go haywire. I have tried the election thing. As you folks may know, I've lost a couple of elections. And so I'm not gonna say that one is perfect over the other. More questions, Scott?
Yes, I have a quick question for you. What are your thoughts about the initiative that some police departments are taking, I guess not cities are taking, to send in social workers instead of police when there seems to be like more of a mental health disturbance as opposed to like a criminal issue?
I think that you're better off having the people who are trained to deal with a situation dealing with it. Now, you have experienced police officers who do an exquisitely good job. You also have some experienced police officers who have not proved that they can deal with mental health problems. So I personally like the idea of using more and more trained folks in mental health and sociological types of issues. But it really, the police department has to take a hard look at all the folks that are on the department. There are some people who signed up to be police officers for the wrong reasons. And so we need to make sure that the folks who are good at it get kept, and that we add more good trained people. So that may be not a clear answer to your question, but it isn't there are police officers who, by their experience, have the right disposition, and there are police officers who get angry too quick or react too violently. That's part of why we've got the cases pending right now where police officers have shot people, and the officers have now been charged with the crime themselves. So that may or may not answer your question, but that's close, I think.
I'm aware of long ago in some towns in Ohio, if you wanted to buy a gun, especially a handgun, you had to go to the police station and have a background check and permit. So many murders are committed by people who buy guns under straw purchase arrangements. And if a guy had to go to the police station to do a straw purchase, he might just be a little more cautious about the idea than if he went to a gun store. Any thoughts?
Speaking for myself, I really wish that we had much better control of handguns and rifles in this country, especially in Franklin County. We have shooting after shooting after shooting. There's hardly a weekend goes by where there hasn't been some sort of confrontation between two people. When I was a kid, if you had a fight, then what ended up happening usually was that somebody walked out with a bloody nose and everybody lived for another day. Now it seems like every time there's a major disagreement, somebody pulls a firearm and somebody gets killed. And my personal theory is that we've got to end up dramatically reducing the number of firearms on the street. So anything that makes that happen, I think will be an improvement. I have never been a favorite of the National Rifle Association. I never will be. I haven't exactly been a favorite of the Fraternal Order of Police, who gave $20,000 to Ron, but are now real happy with the kind of things we're doing with the regional crime center. So I don't know that there is a quick answer to this kind of thing, other than we've just got to end up having fewer and fewer firearms. My grandparents came from England, and so I probably pay more attention to the kinds of firearm control over there than some do. But I really would think that their sense to this is much better. And of course, I think we've got all sorts of other problems. You know, look at the things on January 6th, where people showed up to overtake or overturn the election. It's going to be a long, slow process, but we're going to have to take the firearm problem more seriously.
Callaway had his hand up earlier, and I'm sorry, Scott, but we only have time for one more question.
Scott, given that you have to translate, I'll try to get to the question. Thank you for presenting today. You talked about your budget, you talked about your staff, you talked about your backload in the office. What's your strategy for keeping up with our population growth and the incidence of increasing cases due to all the violence and other cases? So how are you going to grow the office to keep up with the demand?
I have been working on that ever since I've been here. We've had a few have left to go to the Attorney General's office. I don't know if that's a matter of politics or anything else. We have a number of outstanding people here, but we just need more. And I've had good luck with the county commissioners as far as they're expressing their support for us, for them helping to underwrite the cost of new things. This regional crime center thing, I think when the push comes to shove, they will show up for that. I'm attending the commissioners' meeting every week, and they have huge amounts of money to spend, but huge amounts that they have to spend it on. So I think that the name of the game is going to be more trial prosecutors, but also more people who end up helping with the other problems we have, such as the need for social workers and other folks like that. So that's as good as I can do. We're working every week on getting more people, and we've had good cooperation from the county commissioners, but the need is something that just can't be kept up with right now.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. We are out of time. I know there are a couple more questions, so maybe we can send those to Mike and he can pass them along to the prosecutor. Thank you so much for this very informative program. This was really interesting. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Mike, for arranging this. Thank you.
Well, you can feed me more questions through Scott, and I can always try to respond. So
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And final announcement, next week is going to be our last week here, at least for the rest of 2021. We will start meeting November 1st at 168 East Lincoln. It's an Italian village. It's a meeting room adjacent to thank you. So has ample parking, its own parking lot. We will need a couple volunteers probably that are willing to help direct traffic the first few meetings, just because there are 2 parking lots and one is for people who live in the condos nearby, but it's right by the Wonder Bread building, so right off the highway. It's going to be great. Hopefully we will have a permanent home soon. So that's it. Next week, we have Randy from Green Lawn Cemetery, who's going to be talking about all the programs that they do there and why it is wonderful, and we're going to be carving pumpkins. So see you next week, and if you haven't seen someone in a while, tell them to come on down, have fun with us, and sign up for Walking with the Dead, please. See you soon.